Welcome to Hochoka Podcast.
Not so long ago, the concept of synergy was all the buzz. Today, it's worth revisiting in a conversation with two organizations that can identify how together they can bring about a combined effect greater than the sum of their separate endeavors. Let's join the conversation. Hello, Madaki Epi. Welcome to Hochoka, here at the center of St. Joseph's Indian Schools campus. I'm Scott Wooster, your Hochoka host. Joining me are William Newkirk, Director of the American Indian Catholic Schools Network out of the University of Notre Dame, and Robin Connect, now in her new role as Executive Director of Child Services at St. Joseph's Indian School. Will joined us earlier this season to explain the network. Today, he and Robin unpack the synergy the network and school create in their collaboration. Will and Robin, welcome back to Hochoka.
Thank you, Scott.
Great to be here.
So what you're doing here is we want to explore some of the ways that our child services programs partner and learn with the network, Will's network, that you're part of. Yeah. I call it Will's network, but I'm sure it's a collaboration of people.
Exactly.
As you said in the other podcast, working on three main things, formation, college access, and research work.
Right.
First question I would want to know, how can St. Joe's work with the network to apply and learn what we're trying to do?
I think St. Joe's role is to just be on this beautiful journey, networking with other schools that have similar passions, similar directions as us, but also getting guidance and support from Notre Dame and having that ability to really make those connections that can ultimately help our students and families.
And what can we do to help the network? So there's 8 schools. Will and I had this conversation in the other podcast. There's 8 schools that are working through the network. What's our role as a school to help their network?
I think one of the primary focus for us is to just be an open book and really to talk about all of the great things we're doing on campus to help support students and families, share some of the activities that we have in place for students, some of the awareness campaigns that we're doing, just really exploring our journey on truth and healing and how can we kind of just be able to say, this is what we've experienced, this is what we're working through. Hopefully other schools get insight from that and can do the same thing, but we also get insight back from working with schools too.
Yeah, so it's not so much helping the organization, it's helping the schools that are involved in the organization. Would that make sense? Does that feel right to you?
I think that's exactly right. I think, as I said in the previous episode, we're really excited about how St. Joe's has been engaged with our work since 2020, and really actually since 2018.
Yeah.
And I think now for us, it's thinking about the opportunities the staff and the team, the faculty opt into. We just want more St. Joe's people getting involved in AICS information, and we would love to have more conversations that highlight the work at St. Joe's, just like we want to have more stories and conversation that highlight the other schools and what they're doing. So I do think with St. Joe's, you have a big team here, bigger than a lot of the Native Catholic schools.
Okay.
So one of my big questions is, how do we find ways, whether it's principal formation, whether it's classroom teacher formation, whether it's kind of counseling and college advising, how can we find ways, or marketing and development, how can we find more ways for the many people who work at St. Joe's to be coming into interaction and benefiting from AICSN work?
Yeah.
And like we've said, all the schools have different gifts and stories. I think the truth and healing piece and the sophistication and the depth that St. Joe's has approached that. Truth and healing used to be a kind of like a pillar of AICSN or a bucket in our old previous strategic plan. We've actually now call it a foundation, because what we were finding was truth and healing was on the side. Like it was formation and then there's truth and healing. But we need truth and healing woven into everything we do.
Exactly.
College access, research, and of course formation. And so the way St. Joe's is approaching that and thinking about curriculum, truth and healing, I think there's just a conversation. I also think about the murdered and missing Indigenous relatives work. A lot of the schools don't have capacity to tackle that huge pressing issue. And so those are two things I highlight that I would love to deepen the conversation with our schools. But I also think about our summer institute formation work. Some Joe, Kim, Jessamy, Alyssa, Jessica in the last few summers have come to some of the opportunities we've provided through a summer institute.
Okay.
And so I think that is another piece that just shows us kind of great momentum going. And this is something we actually ask a lot as a team and with the school leaders. How can every colleague at a Native Catholic school, whether they have 6 or a few hundred, know that they are a part of the American Indian Catholic School Network and know that there's something for them in it. And so, like we said, we've had classroom teachers, we've had school leaders be part of different pieces. And I think next for us is thinking about formation and research and college access. Everyone at that school knows they're a part of it, and that Notre Dame is better because you all are a part of it, and that hopefully your job you can best serve your students a little bit better because of that. And so that's the momentum we see, and we're excited about some transition and leadership roles here that I think even deepen that piece.
I like how you say, that can impact our students in the work we do here. I feel that so often we have this calling to be part of a mission and to belong and to strive to provide the best environment we can. And any time that you can foster that development in staff is only going to benefit students and families that we work with. And so I really see the network being a place too where our staff can go and speak their hearts and share that love that they have for the mission, but also for being part of a greater network as well. It's important.
And I think about that. We have a winter retreat in Arizona where a number of St. Joe's people have come. The Fall Leadership Summit is an immersion leadership trip to schools, which is here in St. Joe's in 2021. And the Summer Institute as well, where a number of St. Joe's people have come. A big takeaway we see in the feedback and the stories is that sense of mission and solidarity, and that you don't always feel potentially in October or in February, right, during the grind of a school year and the unique challenges of schools. And to get back to kind of bring that back to Beth and her role, working with school leaders kind of as a representative of St. Joe's for AICSN and as kind of one of the academic instructional leaders representing St. Joe with our network. She's had some preliminary conversations with a team member of ours. Her name's Annette Romans, and she's the coordinator of educator formation. She came exactly 1 year ago today. She started working on our team because I got an email that said, remember to celebrate Annette. So we're celebrating Annette in many ways. Today, a 1 year anniversary. But she's a lifelong Catholic school educator serving under-resourced kids in South Bend. She was actually my student teaching supervisor when I did the ACE Teaching Fellows program, which proves to us she can work with absolutely anyone. And she had worked with Holy Cross College in the Holy Cross Fellows program, our bachelor's degree program for teachers, primarily Indigenous teachers in Native Catholic schools without a degree. One of our most important teacher pipeline initiatives. Her work with them was phenomenal from Holy Cross's perspective. And so when she was looking for a new opportunity, we were able to add her a year ago as our educator formation coordinator. And it has been a game changer in what we can do on the level of depth and humility in empowering teachers. And so I know Beth and Annette have started to talk about what could that look like. Annette's working with each school in a little bit of a different way. Different schools have different gifts and capacities. And I think that's a really exciting piece for us is having someone like Annette working with Beth. But in particular, she does an action research fellowship now where teachers from our schools come and they develop a plan. And I think that is a great example. Maybe Beth and Robin, others can identify a teacher or two from St. Joe's, maybe to come out next summer to lead this or start the project at Notre Dame, and then they facilitate it during the year. And I feel like that's a great example for me where things are lined up now for a deeper, more intensive collaboration with some great educators here at St. Joe's.
But with staff development, I think that's really important because part of what we strive for is pushing those standards, exceeding excellence, and making sure that we're providing that support and safety net for our staff to really deepen their growth in education, deepen their commitment to their fields of choice, and to strengthen our mission through that.
And I think that's so perfect because, when we list these key priorities, I always list formation first. So there's such a synergy there, such a deep sense of solidarity too. And as we said, you all are the ones here on the ground. You know the families, you know the kids, you're the experts. We believe what our role can be is facilitating that collaboration and learning with shared educators on the journey and through at Notre Dame or on the sites here. And so I think there's just a great opportunity with our emphasis on formation and that bringing together of a number of educators serving diverse communities for them to share where they have similar challenges and where they have different gifts.
Yeah.
And what a perfect example for our students to see that role modeled with the staff that they work with, following their calling and seeking that out in their own lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
So talk a little bit about St. Joe's and the approach to beyond high school, because that's a big focus for us here. College access efforts and what we're trying to do with that.
So at St. Joe's, we really are committed to walking with students on their journey for life. Once they're part of our family, they're connected, and being able to support a student following their calling, but also knowing that their journey sometimes is their own timeline, and that we are that safe space that they can reach out to and pursue a career path or pursue college education. Part of our role as staff here is to remove barriers and to make that an easier transition for students. And so we have a very extensive alumni system here with staff that stay connected with alumni throughout that whole journey.
And go ahead. You were
I think I'm excited about that. In many ways, I think this is where AICSN, it's kind of our college access undergraduate engagement bucket. I think the formation piece, we had some good proof points there of engagement. I think this is a great opportunity for us in St. Joe's and other schools to have some new opportunities, because we know the vocation and college and career paths there are distinct challenges for Native students and distinct opportunities. And we believe that a Catholic and Native school education provides some really whole person, holistic education to support them in that as a person, as a spiritual individual, as a community member. And, I know given that the students still live here in high school but go to a different school, but that what an opportunity for us to think about Holy Cross College and Notre Dame and St. Mary's College and maybe a summer experience. We're trying to pilot a new idea that brings Native Catholic school students who went to there in 8th grade or a Native Catholic high school. So the high school students here would be eligible for that. They could come and be with other Native Catholic high school students, thinking about college, thinking about culture, thinking about their path, thinking about vocation and whatever that looks like, serving their community. And I think the way that St. Joe's is already thinking about that, and I talked with Jessica, who leads the residential life for students of that age, we can be uniquely situated at a college campus to start those conversations. Not for them to go to Notre Dame, but for them to learn from others at a really pivotal moment in their life.
And see the possibilities. Like I really like how you say it's not just to go to Notre Dame, but it's to explore that as a viable path that feels doable.
Yeah. And for them as young Native people, just as we talked about educators having that sense of solidarity, how cool if they're spending a week of their summer with Native Catholic school students from Arizona and also in South Dakota and Montana. Like who knows what those relationships can mean and what they might teach each other. Yeah. They have a lot that we can't do.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I think our kids, and Robin, I think you back me up on this, our kids are thirsty for that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
We take a couple to Germany every year. We go on donor luncheons all across the country each year. Our kids are working here on campus in the summer, and they're hungry for experience is the big deal with them. We continue to beef up our efforts to find something for them after high school. And it's tricky. You alluded to it. You said it's tricky with the population in general, but it's also tricky because you don't want a one-size-fits-all anybody. And our kids are so diverse. They're not simply a population from the reservations in South Dakota. They're unique personalities, and we have to meet those challenges. And we continue to get better. Every year, 31 years I've been here, every year we get a little better with that. Research.
Yeah.
So one of the facets that you work on is there's a lot of research with the network. What kind of research are you doing? How can we contribute? How can we learn from that?
And this truly is the least developed of our three priorities.
Okay. Yeah.
But we know for us to really play a role in the transformational work that's being done at these schools, as a research institution at Notre Dame. That needs to be the case. And also, Notre Dame as a research institution can be so much stronger if we are a hub around transformative inquiry of Native Catholic education and how they might be able to provide just something different in the life of a young person. And so, for my doctorate, the research I recently completed and hope to continue is a project around the stories, and we keep coming back to stories so many times. And I think that's what research in a very unique way here can elevate the stories of these schools and people. And I was so privileged to listen to the stories of boarding school women who attended boarding schools, many of them Catholic schools, and then went on to teach in Native Catholic schools, AICSN schools. I was at a dinner at a school a couple years ago, and so many people at the table had been dedicated to that school as a teacher for a long time and had attended a boarding school, which was just fascinating for me to think about questions of truth and healing and different models of what Indigenous education looks like in the Catholic space. And so I was able to use Indigenous story work and just kind of empower them to tell their stories. And the life experiences as a student and as an educator are transformational and rare. And these stories aren't going to be around forever. So to capture them. So we're thinking about that as an example of research in a very in a sense that's very much community-oriented or rooted in the person and what they have to share, and how through a research lens that can elevate the story. We also look at self-efficacy in teachers in AICSM programming. So Katie Ward's a PhD candidate who looks at the Holy Cross Fellows and the BA degree students and how that experience of community and cohort model has played a role in their self-efficacy in serving their students and community. So those are two things that go back to this idea of better elevating the voice. And I think that's the type of research we want to do. I'll transition that to this Action Research Fellowship that Annette Romans is leading. It's reminding us, hey, these educators in these schools, they can play a role in the research. We don't want this research to be separate from St. Joe's or from Mappialuta or De La Salle Blackfeet. Let's have it going on in the schools with the teachers as the researcher and practitioner and the voice of the students. And so that's where I think we could get involved with St. Joe in a really powerful way.
And I love that it's story-based.
Yeah.
Because with all the data that can come in at organizations and across the country, those are numbers, but it doesn't really get to the meat of it, which is really the story that goes with that.
Absolutely.
And how each story is unique, but you can learn from each story to improve what we put into place to help that trajectory for students and families.
Right. And when that's the case, we're looking at Indigenous scholars, John Archibald, folks like that with story work who have built this field around Indigenous research that is so much more appropriate for us to be a part of.
So, Robin, we've been working together 20 plus years. 20 plus years?
21.
Okay, 21 years. I know well, you know well, that we share a passion for indigenous identity with the Catholic identity. We both grew up Catholic, and I think our lives have been changed by the indigenous identity here at St. Joe's. How does that fit? Do you guys have anything you want to share about how you're able to meld those two different things, or how we're unique in that we have to do those two different things here?
At St. Joseph's Indian School, I think there's space for both. And I think that's a beautiful thing that we can offer students. Spirituality and the journey of spirituality is so unique and so pivotal, I think, for young people going into adulthood. What we can really provide here at St. Joe's is a foundation that both of those are great support systems to lean on when you're struggling, when you're going through tough times, because you're going to go through tough times. And so at St. Joe's, being able to provide that opportunity for students to learn both, but have them coexist together, I think is so beautiful and important.
Yeah.
I think that's beautifully said. And what's really special about this is just how that takes place at St. Joseph Indian School. It looks very different at the other 7 schools in our
Okay.
network, and it looks very different at the other 20. And that's beautiful. That's the church. That's the global, diverse church. And also a reminder that the church hasn't always celebrated that piece. And so I think it's such an opportunity for the church and for all of us as part of this work that the different schools have such different and diverse ways of celebrating Catholicism, as well as, of course, the diversity and complexity of their own local indigenous culture and spirituality. And so I think that's at the heart of what this network is it is a unique opportunity to be a native Catholic school. And in the past, historically, that wasn't always celebrated,
Right.
but now it can be, and that's going to be what changes the game, I think, for these students. And the new president of the University of Notre Dame, Father Bob Dowd, he was inaugurated last year, and in his inaugural address, he talked about building bridges. And I think these schools are such a hopeful beacon and model of building bridges, and nowhere do we see that more than with culture and the Catholic identity and faith. And what an amazing model for those of us in the church and those of us in different communities and for the world in a really tense and trying time of kind of the peace and trust and relationship that comes from a school that is both deeply Indigenous and deeply Catholic.
Yeah.
And Scott, you know, in the mental health world, our job is to build those protective factors, and spirituality and culture are 2 key components in building that protective structure for developing children.
Absolutely.
For sure.
So we talk about the 8 schools in the network and the 21 schools that are still around. And you talk about the opportunity of what we have here to embrace your Catholicism or Christianity and your Indigenous faith. None of those are pushed on children or their families. And the reason the 21 schools are around, and you don't have to speak to this, but I think you're nodding your head in agreement that the reason they're still around is because they've adapted and that they're not forcing anything. And I think we have a wonderful opportunity here as a network to kind of push that forward as we move along and as we continue to grow in this network. So I think we've filled about what we need to for this conversation, but I look forward to see how this collaboration works and moving into the future. And I thank you for sharing that with me today. I learned a lot, and I hope our viewers did too. But thank you for both of you being on.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. So good to be together.
We'd like to thank our audience for joining us here at Ho-Chokeh at the center of St. Joseph's Indian Schools campus, where we talk about issues central to Native American education today. Until next time, stay centered and be sure to join us on Apple, Podbean, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts.